You are with Cape Talk.
Views and News with Clarence Ford.
It is 9:37. This is Views and News. My name is Clarence. It is that big appointment with Dr. Chris Smith, a British medical doctor, consultant virologist at Addenbrooke's Hospital. Welcome to you, Chris. It's always good to chat
Hi,
with you.
Clarence. Good morning. And we're almost still saying Happy New Year. I've already wished it to you once, but, what's that between friends? Happy New Year again.
No,
Do you know, today's an
absolutely.
important day, though, because guess what today is?
Friday.
It's my birthday.
Oh,
It's
my
my birthday,
goodness.
and I was waiting for my birthday card to arrive from you, and it's obviously been held up in the post because not you've forgotten or anything.
Lekker verjaar, Omar. Lekker verjaar. It's like happy birthday in Afrikaans. There's
Well,
your
thank you very
birthday
much.
card.
But no, it's nice to have a Friday, and it's a Friday, and it's good to have a birthday on a Friday because of course Friday's also
Happy-
Poets' Day, isn't it? You know what Poets' Day is?
No.
Well, the P stands for the ruder word for urinate, and then the O stands for off, and then the E stands for early, and the T stands for tomorrow, and the S stands for Saturday. So Friday is Poets' Day.
Poets' Day. I got that. I like that. Let's go to a question from James. Why does hitting your funny bone produce a tingling electric shock sensation rather than a standard dull ache?
Hi, James. Where your funny bone is, that's your olecranon, which is the back of the bone that forms the elbow joint. And winding round your olecranon in a groove in the bone is your ulnar nerve. And the ulnar nerve is one of the nerves that supplies your distal forearm, in other words, the hand and digits. And specifically, it supplies half of the second smallest finger, the lower half, and the lower half of your hand. So when you bash your elbow, you squeeze the nerve against your olecranon, and you therefore, in the same way as I squeeze any nerve, you cause the nerve to trigger abnormal impulses because of the pressure on the nerve. And this leads the brain to conclude that there must be something happening in the territory supplied by that nerve. So you refer the funny sensations to the territory of that nerve, which is the lower half of your hand. So you get that numbness, tingling and pain in the lower half of your hand until your ulnar nerve recovers. And that's why it's called the funny bone, because it produces these funny sensations when you hit it. Yes, your elbow is going to hurt, but most people notice the effects neurologically on the ulnar nerve, which is manifest in the hand.
Zuki's on the line from Bloberg. Welcome, Zuki. Always good to have you.
Hi, Clarence. Happy 2026. And good morning, Dr. Chris, and happy birthday, Dr.
Oh, thanks,
Chris.
Suki. That's so kind. So you remembered. There you go. Just Clarence, who's
Yes,
It's
you're
just
in the
neglected.
same week as I am, so I'll always remember.
us January birthday people, in the southern hemisphere it's a bit different, but in the northern hemisphere it's a bit miserable because you've just had Christmas. The weather's terrible, and so no one's in the mood for a party. No one's got any money. And so it's the most miserable time to have a birthday. But it does give you an opportunity to have a second birthday, which is what I did last year. And I was like the Queen and the King of England. Like, let's have two birthdays a year, an official one, and then an unofficial one when you actually party because the weather's good. So I had a party in the summer last year because it was a reasonably big birthday as well. And so I kind of make up for the fact that I have a January birthday. So maybe you could do the same, although you don't have the weather problem that I do.
My question for today is about faith. Are you born with your level of, or is it something that is trained? Reason being, I will exercise and I don't drink water, but I don't think I ever get thirsty, whereas my 3-year-old and 5-year-old nieces are constantly calling for water. So is that because their mother trained them to drink water, or are they actually experiencing thirst?
When my kids say, and still sometimes today, much to their chagrin, they say, "I'm thirsty." And you say, "No, it's Friday today." You're born innately with a sense of thirst. And this is true of all animals, because if you look at your dog, it doesn't have to be trained to know it needs a drink. This is because the part of your brain called the hypothalamus, which sits at the bottom of the brain above the roof of your mouth, it does a whole range of jobs which are part of your subconscious. It's taking care of all of the things that you don't have to think about, like when you feel tired and want to go to sleep, when you need to wake up in the morning. It governs the menstrual cycle and fertility, for example, how hot you are, how cold you are, how hungry you are, and guess what? It's tasting your blood. Because the hypothalamus is measuring the salt concentration of the blood, And when the blood becomes too salty, it tells the body via a hormone signal through the pituitary, start saving water. And that signal goes to the kidney and says, do not throw away any more water, scavenge back as much water as possible, we're getting thirsty. And it sends signals to other parts of your brain to present to your consciousness a sensation of thirst, and that makes you drink. And then the salt concentration drops again because the water's absorbed into the blood, it dilutes the salt, the concentration falls, and then the brain, via the hypothalamus, says, now the blood concentration is more normal, I don't feel thirsty anymore. And that is a wired-in impulse. Without that, we would quickly expire, because thirst is going to be the fastest killer compared to, say, hunger. You'll die of thirst a long time before you die of hunger, because we have insensible losses. Every day, every single one of us is losing about a litre or two of water from our bodies. We breathe out half a litre into the air around us. We sweat up to 5 litres an hour in very hot climates, and you lose half a litre through the other way of excreting from the body, and urination. So we all have these insensible losses. We all have to put the water back, and being thirsty is one way we can do that.
Let's go to Vernon. Vernon's got a question. If humans can't see UV light, what is it that humans see reflected of some clothing in a room with a UV light source?
Right, well, this is called black light. And when you have something that glows in black or UV light, what's happening is that the light source is exciting atoms or molecules on the surface of that substance, which are absorbing the energy from the ultraviolet, and they are re-radiating the energy in light regimes that we can see. So in other words, they're transducing the energy in the ultraviolet into a form we can see. And when you look at your smartphone or your smart TV, you're doing exactly the same thing. That technology works the same way, because there are deep blue, or even in some cases near UV, LED sources in there. They are then shone through a substance called a phosphor, which absorbs that blue light and then produces light of a range of different colours, reds, greens and blues, which are mixed together in the right proportions to produce white light. So no one has ever invented a white LED. They usually use a blue, deep blue or UV LED or near UV LED to excite a phosphor to produce white light. And so when we go to a nightclub and something's glowing, usually it's teeth, isn't it? You often see for various reasons, and you can spot the fillings, you can spot the dental work very, very quickly, because the substances that absorb the UV are different in a prosthetic device compared to natural tissue, and this makes the glow happen. You can also do this with scorpions. One of the ways you can see a scorpion, certain scorpions at least, is you shine ultraviolet on them. And the scorpions have a molecule called carboline, I think it's beta-carboline, which absorbs UV and then converts it or re-radiates it in a yellow light, which you can see, and it makes the scorpion glow yellow or green.
Let's go to Kathy's question. If a person lived in a cave with no natural light or clocks, would their circadian rhythm eventually settle on a 24-hour cycle, or could it drift?
Kathy, this experiment has been done. It was done by scientists in America a number of decades ago now, but they put people in effectively a cave, and they divorced them from all of the normal cues that we use to work out what time of day it is. Because if you think about it, yes, the most powerful cue is the light from the sun coming up in the morning, and our eyes are tuned to the blue light in that light, and they hardwire into our body clocks to set it and reset it if we stray, for instance, go across time zones because we fly from east to west or west to east, for example. We also, though, integrate other cues, such as when we eat. That's why you have a bowel habit. Your gut gets used to being fed at a certain time, and we're very tuned into that energy flow and the activity of the microbes that are also tuned into that. They're all feeding in and telling us what time it is. Activity. When we're doing things, moving, there are signals going from our muscles and bones into the nervous system. Again, this is helping to build a learned response to a day, and it's used to inform what time of day we think it is. If you divorce people from all of these signals, which is what this American study did. The question they're asking is, well, does the body cease to keep time? We now know that there is a structure in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus whose sole job it is to keep time. But before they understood that, this is why they did the experiment. And the answer is that despite divorcing people from clocks and daylight and normal meal times, they just said to people, exist, do whatever you want when you want to do it. And the people did. They found that their time centered on about a 24.5-hour cycle. So it's not a perfect day, but it's close. So in other words, the clock drifts if you let it. If you just allow people to exist with no external time inputs, their clock will drift, and it will drift slowly, but it does drift, but it's about 24 hours. And that then led people to work out where in the brain the suprachiasmatic nucleus is. It's in our friend the hypothalamus that Zuki was talking about earlier, and it is a cluster of 20, 30,000 nerve cells that keep time with a genetic clock. And so those cells turn on a gene, which then turns on a second gene, which turns on a third gene, that feeds back and turns off the first gene. This genetic clock, like a genetic domino effect, takes about 24 hours to tick round, or as we now know, about 24.5 hours. And that's how it keeps time. But to fix that drift, that's why we need these external cues. And that's why we have this connection between our eyes and the suprachiasmatic nucleus to feed in light signals to help us to reset the clock if we get jet lagged.
Paulo asks, why does our mind overthink the worst? How do we get our minds to overthink the best? There's a good question.
Yeah, hi, Paolo. I think, and I was talking to a lady in Germany about this before Christmas, because she was interested in the phenomenon known as the nocebo effect. Now, you've heard of the placebo effect, which is if I do something to you and tell you this is going to take away your pain, quite a lot of the time it does. And in other words, we're not doing anything chemically to you, we're just telling you something, but the power of mind makes that thing manifest. So what we want to happen, happens. And this is because it invokes the brain's pain-killing circuits in the case of pain, for example. And it's called the placebo effect because placebo in Latin means I will please. But there is also the mirror image of that, which is the nocebo effect, which is if I tell you, you're going to take this pill and it's going to make you feel awfully queasy and possibly throw up, and you probably have aches and pains and maybe a headache. Well, a significant proportion of the time, if you go back and ask people, after you took this pill, in inverted commas, it was nothing, it was just a placebo, nocebo, they will say, oh yes, I had all these terrible side effects. And she was interested in whether the effect works exactly the same, but in opposite directions, or if one is more powerful than the other. And she found that people learn the nocebo effect and hang on to the nocebo effect far longer and to a far greater degree than the placebo effect. This was a paper published in the journal eLife just recently, if anyone wants to go and look it up. And I said to her, well, why should there be that difference? And she said, I think we're hardwired this way because of once bitten, twice shy. If you think about it from an evolutionary point of view, what's going to benefit us more in the long term? Learning the hard way once, or just having to do it multiple times to find out the hard way. So we tend to be overcautious and overcompensate because better to be safe than sorry. That was her conclusion. And I think the same applies to Paolo's question here.
Let's go to Chris's question. It's a voice note.
I recently went and saw the Northern Lights up in the Arctic, and the KP index, which is something I learned while we were there, was 3.4. Now, we couldn't see the Northern Lights through the naked eye, but we put our cell phones up there and we saw brilliant green colors and so on, and the movement of the Northern Lights. Can you explain why we can't see it and yet our cell phones are able to see it? Thanks.
Oh, Chris, I'm so jealous because there's very few things on my bucket list. But going to see the Aurora Borealis, or Australis, that's the southern equivalent, is on my list of things I absolutely want to do. But, as you say, there's no guarantee that you will. You have to be Joanna Lumley and be able to go to really fancy places in the far north in the Arctic Circle in order to pretty much guarantee it. But actually here in the UK, we've had quite a lot of intense solar activity, and the KP index that you were mentioning just there, just in case anyone didn't catch that, that's a measure of geomagnetic activity and solar activity. So, in other words, the northern lights occur because a stream of charged material is coming away from the sun at about 1.5 million kilometers an hour all the time. It's called the solar wind. This buffets the Earth, but the Earth is shielded by a magnetic field, which is created by the Earth's own spinning Earth's core, iron core, and this has the effect of deflecting these charged particles around the outside of the Earth. And if you think about the pattern of magnetic field lines a bar magnet makes on a piece of paper, if you sprinkle iron filings, you get sort of rings, a bit like onion rings around the planet. So when the solar wind comes in, it's guided around these onion rings and into the poles. And when it gets to the poles, it descends deep into the atmosphere because that's where the field lines are coming in. And that drives these high energy particles into the atmosphere where they excite atoms and molecules in Earth's atmosphere. And the dominant species are oxygen molecules and nitrogen molecules. When these are excited by these particles streaming in at high energy from the sun, they glow, because one of the phenomenon of spectroscopy is that when you give energy to particles, they, because of quantum mechanics, have to give out the energy at certain wavelengths, or colours, in other words. And so the atmosphere is forced to glow. And in the case of the nitrogen and oxygen, you tend to get greens and blues and reds. But there's a threshold amount of light that we can see with the naked eye. But that same threshold does not exist with other devices, charge-coupled devices like the chips in the backs of the cameras in your smartphone. So although that glow is there, with the atmosphere glowing, driven by this energy being forced into it from the sun, the level that's there may not be enough for your eye to see it. But with a charge-coupled device, a sensitive chip on a phone, and the ability to apply filters, so you can say, I want you to emphasize wavelengths of this or colors of this frequency, you can bring those colors out and see what's there that the naked eye can't see.
Do all the planets turn the same way? And if they do not turn the same way, does our whole solar system turns in our own galaxy versus all the other solar systems?
Hi, Wilhelm.
Or they're all random?
The answer is that the planets in our system, our solar system, are going around the sun in the same direction broadly and in the same plane. Pluto's a bit of an anomaly. It's slightly off kilter and has an eccentric orbit, so it actually at some points is inside the orbit of Neptune. So it's not the farthest planet, or dwarf planet in Pluto's case, away from the sun, but they're all broadly on a plane. And many of these planets are spinning. Some of them, though, like Mercury, for example, is very close to the sun and spinning in a tidally locked configuration, which means it's turning at the same rate that it goes around the sun, so it always points the same face towards the sun. Other planets are turning very, very slowly. On Venus, a day lasts longer than a year, which is a bit bizarre, and some planets are knocked sideways. Uranus, for example, it's as though someone's tipped it on its side and it's turning sideways. We think possibly because something smacked into it when it was forming, and this made it accept this rather strange configuration. Our solar system and our sun are part of a cluster of stars in our bit of the galaxy, and they are going around the galaxy. And in the same way that our planet takes about a year to go, or what we call a year, to go around the sun, our sun takes a few 100 million years to go around the galaxy. So everything is turning, everything's in motion, but some things are in a bit more motion than others.
Unfortunately, Jenny, we can't get to yours today, but we'll hold it over for next week. And maybe just, Chris, you can tell us about the condition of the Earth's core. Rumor has it that that molten mass is spinning slower, or maybe it's stopped, or maybe it's even reversed direction.
The Earth is turning, and that means the interior of the Earth is turning, and at the core of the Earth is a molten iron core, and we think through a phenomenon called a geodynamo, that spinning core is what gives us our magnetic field. The Earth is losing energy to the moon because we have tides and so on. So the moon is moving away from the Earth by a couple of centimetres every year. We've measured that by putting a mirror on the moon and bouncing light from it. And because of the loss of energy from the Earth to the moon, the planet is slowing down. Therefore, the length of a day is increasing. but also if the outside slows, then the inside slows. Now that might have long-term repercussions for the magnetic field because it does rely on that mobile core to generate the field, but to reassure you, it's slowing down by about 100 milliseconds every 100 years or so. So we're not talking about a massive departure that's going to happen anytime soon, but days were certainly a bit shorter when dinosaurs were roaming around compared to how they are today.
Thank you, Dr. Chris Smith, the Naked Scientist, every Friday just after 9:30.